Hey, Catalyst. It's obvious. Membership models work. They are rising in popularity, and why not? It helps your patients heal in a protective and supportive environment where they can meet with you in multiple ways and different touch points. You also benefit because you get paid your value. You have a consistent revenue stream. But it's not always wine, roses, and unicorns, especially if you are a catalyst archetype reflective river. You see, we might have a hard time with boundaries. We might want to please everybody. Maybe we don't want to raise our rates. Well, this episode is for you because we're going to go deep into what happens when you start to feel those little frictionable times in your day and your skin starts to crawl and you might need to be making some uncomfortable decisions. Well, you're not alone. We will dive into some of our best studio conversations inside my mentorship, and you will leave with some actionable tips to help you use this friction as fuel for growth. Welcome to The Catalyst Way, the podcast for women clinicians ready to clear the chaos and create space to flourish. I'm Dr. Lara Salyer, a former burned out family practice doctor turned mentor, author, and professional calendar whisperer. I help women in medicine reclaim time, trust their intuition, and build practices that actually fit their lives. Each week, you'll get practical tools, creative strategies, and tiny shifts that help you color outside the lines and paint a work-life masterpiece of authentic, aligned joy. What if your moment of friction is actually fueling your next upgrade? And this is a question I thought as I pondered the idea of discomfort in the soil that we are growing in, that we're trying to help our patients grow. And if you're a woman running a functional medicine practice, you know you're being pulled in many different directions, and patients are uncomfortable. And we have to sit with that discomfort, right? We're asking them to do some hard things. We're asking them to change their habits. We're asking them to practice different ways of eating and really think about their whole medical history in a slightly different lens. And that can be very uncomfortable and it can feel like friction. This episode was inspired by a personal moment when I was preparing for our studio time, which is our weekly mastermind inside Catalyst Studio. And I went outside into my garden. And for those that are following, I am loving this new opportunity to cosplay a gardener, I guess. I mean, I've done so many other things, might as well try this. And I'm kind of using it like a sandbox for play. So I went out to look at my flowers because we had just had a beautiful rainstorm. And I saw this gorgeous mushroom just bursting through the surface right next to my flowers. I thought that was awesome. I made a note of it. I went inside, threw some piles of laundry in, started preparing notes, and then went outside a little bit later, about an hour later, and the mushroom was gone. It was gone. It made me think of the exact perfect environment that mushroom needed, the perfect pH, the perfect water, the perfect soil for it to bloom and grow. And then its moment was gone. And it got me thinking how friction is important, that we all need these opportunities in our soil that help us push through that surface onto the next level of evolution of how we think medicine should be delivered. As always, I have my notes here from our sessions. They're so powerful. In our weekly masterminds, it's like a fun girl gang. We just get together and we really help each other process, work through, and support big decisions, little decisions. And the theme of this week was all of us feeling this collective reflective river vibe where we felt like we had to say some hard things. We felt guilt if we charged people when they didn't cancel, or what were some of the other topics? Yeah, discomfort around charging more for our services when we clearly started to expand our skill set, maybe receiving different certification. We also didn't know how to encounter times when people would not get better. And there was a lot of this discussion of these prickly moments that they knew there was something to be done in their practice. But what do we do? So think about it. You walk in, you might know that at the outset, there are certain things that are going to be a bit more friction in a membership model until you get it ironed out, right? So as you're developing your membership model, a lot of the friction initially is why membership. You're trying to explain to patients why this makes sense. And when you do it over and over, it starts to feel frictionless. you start to feel confident in what you're offering, especially if you have a visual aid. And that's what we all agreed on is this visual aid helps patients understand what the membership is offering, all the things included in each tier, and why this helps because you're supporting growth. You're not forcing them to open their pocketbook only when they're sick. You're saying, I'm investing in you just as you're investing in yourself, and I'm here with you every step of the way. But that big friction of explaining to a patient why a membership works, that lasts for a little bit. Once they're hooked, they're hooked. And then they refer their friends, who then refer their friends. And you might then give another talk in your community. People understand. And soon you're pleasantly busy. And that initial friction through practice was eliminated. You're feeling proud. You're feeling happy that you're helping patients along their way. But don't worry, there's always another AFGO, another effing growth opportunity. There's going to be more friction because that is where growth happens. And if you practice leaning into this friction instead of avoiding it, which is a lot of what we do, we don't like to feel discomfort. We don't like it when we don't have the immediate answer. So we'll suppress any small moments of friction. And actually, those can be really eye-opening and help us gain even more confidence in understanding how we can serve our patients better. So it comes within. If you're not convinced of your offer and the value you provide in membership, patients won't be either. So the call could be coming from inside the house. If you're having a hard time getting people to understand what membership is, then maybe we need to work on some of the ways you highlight your expertise and experience. You can do this by looking at competitors. What is another model of medical care? We have the insurance model, we have fee for service, we have packages, we have membership. There are a lot of ways to deliver medical care. And some of them might be a better fit for the patient that's inquiring about your services. But all you can do is show them what you're doing differently. Packages, right? You educate them that packages, that's fine. You can pay thousands of dollars for 6 months of care. But what happens when you're not to where you thought you would be at the end of 6 months? Do you buy a whole nother package? What if you only need 1 or 2 months of support, but you're going to pay another 6 months? Or what if you get better faster? You've just spent $6,000, let's say, on a 6-month care package. And then the provider feels almost like, okay, good job. You got better faster. I get it. We all went into medicine to help people, regardless of age, regardless of economics. And societal programming says you deserve to have medical care. It should be free. It should be low cost, but it is not working. Insurance is crumbling, and we're seeing this all around the news media. And transformation takes time and presence. So if you are running a functional and integrative practice, it does not work if it's fee for service. It really doesn't, because people will then retreat and they overestimate their ability to make this transformation a reality. If they're invested month by month, they get the continued support. And when you show that this is a reliable way to get healthier and you start to feel more confident, their initial friction of buying into this model is evaporated. Here are some of the things we talked about in studio. There are moments that are almost sacred with a patient when you're in a relationship and you're watching them make these changes in how they eat and move and how they think about sunlight and sleep. And you're watching them face some hard realities that maybe some of the habits they thought were healthy lifelong aren't right for their genetic makeup or their body. Or maybe the narrative that they were taught about their medical history needs a few edits and additions because that narrative isn't set in stone. And plasticity is possible and they can get better. That can be hard. Sometimes identities are clung into what diagnosis we have, and then that becomes our identity. So we're doing a lot of care that's invisible in a functional and integrative medical practice. We're doing a lot of care that really is a heart to heart, almost a soul first lens, that we're helping patients really come to terms with things and move in their own timeline. And that can be hard to put a value on. Much like a great therapist, when you're in session with a therapist, the hour can fly by and you walk out going, well, okay, I learned a lot about myself or I uncovered something, but really what has changed? There isn't always going to be a physical, tangible, tactile evidence and receipt that you just went through a massive change. And I think that's what catches a lot of us up. We shared about this in our studio time, worrying that we're not doing anything unless we're tweaking a supplement or adding another lab test. And we all came to the agreement that sometimes that's not where the healing lies. It's the magic between the words that you're saying. Sometimes just your presence is powerful enough for a patient to feel validated and feel like they have the support they need to finally make some tough life changes. And asking yourself, what am I really offering? Can be, yeah, physical things, lab tests, the expertise of interpreting that data, personalized care and attention, listening. But don't forget you're offering your heart. You're offering this focused attention that only you can give, not anyone else, only you in your signature way. And this was a wonderful way for all of us just to reset our psyche and feel proud of what we do in all of our own colorful, unique ways. We bring gentle and impactful care to all of our patients across the nations. As you can tell, the biggest friction for most of our providers happens to be around charging for your services. It's really interesting, right? These two industries, healthcare and finance, are very secure, very HIPAA encrypted, very private. Not a lot of people want to share what's on their ICD-10 list, nor do they want to share how they save their money or don't, or when they had a check bounce years ago. All those things are very cloaked in this veil of shame. I think because a lot of us learn our health habits from our family of origin, which is passed down by ancestors, right? So you might have some kitchen table wisdom of how to take care of a cut or a bee sting. And it also filters into the food you eat. And you start to absorb your family values without even thinking that maybe a bowl of Fruit Loops isn't the healthiest breakfast choice. But we all survive and we adapt. Now, finances are the same way. And we discovered in this session about friction that a lot of us had friction around the money topic. We had a hard time saying, yes, this is how much I'm worth, because we felt like we had to give an itemized list of where every minute of our time would be spent in exchange for their hard earned cash. And that comes because we all have our own money issues handed down by generations, right? Some of us may have grown up in a family where money wasn't discussed. It was just available. Let the parents worry about it. The kids didn't have to know, and everything was provided. They figured it out, right? Lavish vacations or not, but money was really never a topic. Or you lived in a family where it was always a topic of stress. How are we going to pay our bills? What do we have to go without this week in order to make sure we have enough for that vacation coming up in a few weeks? We all have different ways of saving and spending, and it's very behavioral. So it doesn't surprise me that every single tactical wisdom that I'm going to share with you comes from our studio, and it's mostly around financial discussion. So I'm going to look at my notes here. And this topic was brought about when we talked about people pushing back with prices or having things that they wanted to offer different than the standard membership model. And one catalyst said they also offer an annual prepay option with a huge discount. This helps them improve cash flow. It also gives patients a nice perk that you're going to commit for the long term. So sure, you could pay for a membership monthly. You can cancel after a certain time, but if you pay for a whole year, you get a discount. And it ends up being this perk for both practitioner and patient. Another catalyst talked about creating better boundaries around re-enrollment. Because what can happen is we have a front-loaded job as a functional medicine practitioner. We are often looking through past medical records. We're incorporating current symptoms. We're reviewing their case long before we see them in the visit. Then we see them in the visit, and then we start the foundational work. And all of us have different tactics, but most of us start with the gut. So we're doing extensive, education about gut healing, possibly a modified elimination diet. We're doing all of this to educate them how this works. And then we might see them for maybe a visit. And it can often happen where they decide, I'm fine. I think this is enough. I'm overwhelmed, even just with that initial visit. And so I would be happy just to work on this for a while. And what was happening is they overestimate their ability, which is human. We all do, right? We think we can DIY it. So they get this beautiful plan that the practitioner had written out for them. They go, and then 8 months later, they're knocking on the door again in the portal message saying, hey, I started that diet, but then I fell off because I had my sister's wedding, and then the supplements came in, but I only took half of them half the time. And I don't know, my symptoms are kind of worse. I also have this new thing. And so they anticipated they could just start their membership up right then. And we talked about the boundaries around that. What feels good for you? And I'm asking you, listener, because there is no right answer here, but our bodies are a dynamic river of change. So having boundaries on when you will allow a re-enrollment without a fee is a great outlined disclaimer you should have in your terms and conditions. So for some of our practitioners, it was 6 months. They could get that initial visit and elect to cancel. But if they showed up 6 months later, they had to have a whole new initial visit because things could change. Other people weren't happy with that. They thought maybe 2 months was good because they were dealing with oncology or other really dynamic changing conditions. And then others thought a year would be fine. All that matters is having clarity and transparency. That gives you that confidence. And if you have that in your terms and conditions, you can easily tell a patient, oh, sure, absolutely. My policy is you can take whatever I gave you on your initial visit, and you're free to try and make sure it works for your life. You don't have to join my membership at all. If that's enough to get you healthy, I am so glad for you. But you don't get access to me in the portal. You aren't going to be included in my weekly group visits. And if you decide you do need additional care anytime after 6 months, you will have to pay for a whole new initial visit. And as long as you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. You see, we take the factors of emotion and like investment and feeling like you must cater all out of the equation. It gives them that autonomy, and you become a cheerleader. I've had many patients on the street tell me they benefited just from that one session, and I'm glad for them. I don't want to take someone's money that doesn't need me. And so this is a great way to highlight boundaries. A lot of our catalysts were excited with revisiting their terms and conditions and seeing what loopholes they may have left open that could be further solidified with really clear communication. Quick intermission. When I was suffering burnout, I didn't need another protocol. I needed permission to be myself, which is why I wrote my book, Right Brain Rescue. It's a funny, raw, and honest take on the physician burnout epidemic, and also how creativity helped me come back to life. This is also why I love making infographics and self-paced courses, because I want to save you time and spark your creativity and help you see that healing happens when we're fully ourselves. So head to drlarasalyer.com/shop and browse the products. You might find something that can save you time, spark your creativity, and help you make your career the joy that it should be. This next piece of advice from a catalyst is awesome because she encountered one of those days where it probably wouldn't matter what you said or did, but you couldn't make this patient happy. We've had those days. I have had those days. And I need to put myself in a timeout sometimes when wow, I just woke up and I'm just really not happy. And this patient came to her in that frame of mind. Let's just say her wise self was not driving the car, most likely her oppositional teen. And she was demanding a refund, and she was saying how nothing was working and how this really didn't help. And she then proceeded to try to slander this provider with leaving a bad review and doing all sorts of things. When the staff and this provider knew her care was exquisite, that there were milestones that were achieved as evidenced in the records, she just was having a really awful, no good day. And so another catalyst said, you know what I do? I go into my gratitude folder, and she keeps a folder of all her patient cards, or she has her staff print out any great letters or testimonials that they may have offhandedly sent to like your nurse or the front desk. oh, I love what so-and-so did. I'm feeling better already. You don't hear a lot of those things. But if you set the culture of your clinic to capture gratitude and prioritize those times, put it in a folder and you can review that. It takes about 10 pieces of gratitude to outdo one negative comment, and you can start to feel that you are doing a good job. We just need that reminder. I think we are the hardest on ourselves, and that can cut deep when a patient has a grievance. And like I teach my kids, there's a truth to everything. So even if the grievance feels absolutely unfounded, there is some truth to it, but maybe today's not the day to investigate that. Let's leave that for when you're feeling a little more grounded, set and setting is in place, and then maybe you can dissect where could it have been that she really wasn't happy with the care, It's worth investigating, but just not on that day. And the final part about friction. We feel friction internally as a provider when it feels like we're just sort of coasting. I think there's something inherent in any medical professional where we feel like we have to constantly be fixing. In fact, I feel like that's what medical school does. It teaches us as doctors to fix and dismiss, fix and dismiss. And so we just kind of do that. It's like a little assembly line, and that's fine. I benefit from that. We all need that. That's acute medicine. Help me with my problem, tell me what to do, dismiss me, right? We're not here to have weekly Sunday dinners with our doctors, nor would they want that. But in a functional medicine clinic, it's less of the fix and dismiss and more of the nurture and nourish. We are really trying to help them understand how they can reclaim that autonomy and orchestrate their own healing. So we are finding these blind spots, helping them understand, and we're sort of co-creating this journey with them, right? And so when we do that, we still can fall into the trap of, but I didn't do anything this visit, you know? But you did. You held space. You reflected back how far they've come. You've maybe given them a few more articles to read about, but no, maybe you didn't order a test, or no, maybe you didn't change the dose of their DHEA. But there's a lot of value in the presence of a healer and a patient just for a moment, 30 minutes, an hour. There's a lot you've done. So when I start feeling that friction in my body, like I feel like we've stalled and we're like just spinning our wheels in mud. And my patient and we've tried some things and then they just haven't really come to our sessions with any new ideas or new symptoms. It just feels like we're rehashing their anchor goals that we've set at the beginning of our relationship. I will often ask a reflective question like, you know, what do you feel has changed? Are you finding value in this service? Because sometimes they'll be honest and say, not really. And again, that feels like friction, but I don't take it personally because what that means to me is perhaps they need another provider that has a different skill set. So often I might ask, tell me more. Where in the treatment do you feel you still need some fortification? Maybe it's a different colleague that I'll refer them to. But more likely, I'd say 85% of the time where I'm not seeing value, they come forward and say, oh my gosh, when you told me about this thing the other week, I started doing this thing, I feel better. But I didn't know that. And so just asking your patients, what kind of value are you receiving from this service? When you're feeling friction, you might be surprised. So next time, if you're feeling friction with a plateau in a patient, use one of these takeaways from the Catalyst Studio and ask them, where are you finding this valuable? How has this made a difference in your life? And you might be surprised at all the wonderful things that are happening that are underneath your radar. All right, we've been through a lot in this episode, all about friction. And if you are sitting here thinking, yeah, I really don't think I have any friction, you're not paying attention because there's friction everywhere. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. And that's what your body will tell you. You might have alarm bells go off thinking, oh my goodness, I do see some friction now and everybody else has it figured out. Nobody has it figured out, but you do need to let that friction teach you. You do need to become ripe to that opportunity to push through the surface and let that friction give you information so that you can evolve. Whether it's work or life, whether it is family or professional, patients, friction is just giving you information. And whether you show up and decide to unpack that, that's on you. And it's a lot more fun and easy to pack and unpack in a safe environment. So if you're interested in learning more about the Catalyst Studio, please schedule a brainstorming session with me. Or If you know of a colleague who could benefit from learning a little bit about friction, pass this episode along to them. Like and subscribe, and continue watching these weekly episodes as we color outside the lines together. Thanks for listening to The Catalyst Way, where we clear the chaos and create space to flourish in medicine and life. If today's episode lit a spark in you, your next step is to go take the Catalyst Archetype quiz. It's fun, free, and freakishly accurate. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create. In less than 5 minutes, you'll uncover your burnout risk, your creative strengths, and work rhythms that energize you. Because it's not about finding a perfect plan, but rather flowing with the one that fits you. Go to drlarasalyer.com/create. And remember, teeny shifts create massive impact. So keep coloring outside those lines.